Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, Oakland Men's Basketball Game Reviews. I am your host of the GioMoShow, Giovanni Mosheri, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the GioMoShow for weekly coverage of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. This week, Oakland stays alive in their pursuit of a top 4 spot by splitting the toughest road trip in the league with a loss against Wright State, but a win against Northern Kentucky, all on the road. And joining me once again to break down all the action and preview the upcoming week is from the HoriZone Roundtable. It is Matt Dudek returning to the GioMoShow. What's going on, Matt?
What's going on, Gio? Thanks again for letting me come back on. I guess I didn't do too terrible the first time, so you let me do it again.
You've earned a second round, so appreciate it.
A lot of pressure. Let's see if I can go for round 3. We'll see how this goes.
We'll see how it goes, and you guys can see how it goes for Matt. He is the co-host of the HoriZone Roundtable podcast that recaps all the action in the Horizon League, and he's also a co-host of Expand Your Horizons Preview Edition, where they preview each men's basketball game in the Horizon League, both with Bob McDonald at the HoriZone Roundtable. And you can follow Matt on Twitter at HoriZonMatt. All those details will be in the description of wherever you are listening. So, Matt, let's break it down chronologically. We'll start with the Wright State game. It was kind of a similar recipe for many of Oakland's losses, but it stings even more when you have it against a good team like Wright State.
It's frustrating. Like there's no other words come to mind other than it's frustrating. Like you said, it's kind of what they've been doing. They don't know how to close out games. They were up big in this game, and they end up falling by a couple points there, and it comes down to little things. Just didn't get it done again. And you hate to say the word again, but it looked no different than the Oregon State game. It looked no different than the Hawaii game. We've seen this script from them, and they still haven't figured out how to change that yet. Although we'll talk about maybe they did figure out how to change. But at least we've seen this, and they did it again, you know?
Yeah, and it stings especially. I was at hosting a live event or live watch party for it, so I had to kind of experience it with a full house crowd. But when I was breaking down the game, I had 3 keys to it, and I'm using the European hand for 3. First key was to neutralize Brandon Knoll again. Oakland was able to do that throughout the game. Second key was to not allow another school record in 3-pointers made for Wright State, which Oakland allowed last time. So limit the threes. And the third one was to control the tempo like they did against Milwaukee. First half, they followed many of those things. They closed out Wright State from 3. Knoll really wasn't a factor offensively, and Oakland at first had control of it, but it just slipped away in the second half.
Well, and I think your 3 keys are huge. I agree. Before the game, I'd have said the same thing. The problem is they did those things, and they still didn't win. I mean, Brandon Knoll finished the game with, I think it was 8 points.
Yeah.
8 points, 4 rebounds for someone that was supposed to be the Horizon League. He was voted Horizon League preseason player of the year. Like, that's a great game if you could hold him to that. And they did it twice. I mean, they had a script both times they played Wright State now. They stuck to that. You know, they limited him. The 3-point shooting was much less. They were, I think, I'm looking at it here. What is it? 7 to 23, 30%. Okay, that's even better than the first game. So, like, what went wrong? That's the question. And, like, I'm not smart enough to know, but at some point, the people that are smart enough to know still haven't figured out why this keeps happening.
Yeah, and especially like the 7 of 23 from 3, that's about 30% for Wright State. They were 1 of 7 in the first half. Now, Oakland was 1 of 9, but it was still like you at least neutralize it and cut it to even ground. But it's those 5 minutes at the end of the first half and the start of the second half. That's when Wright State started to close what was a 13-point lead down to, I believe, 7. And then they just unloaded from 3. There were 6 of 16 in the second half. Like the script flipped in the second half.
Well, and there's a couple things that, in my opinion, that I noticed, and I've kind of been seeing this rear its head. As far as, you know, Wright State, they made one change from the last time Oakland to play them, and they also took a red shirt off of somebody with Andre Holden, and he had a double-double for Wright State with 11 and 11, which is a great game from a young big, especially against Oakland's big men down there, which is what Baru and Alan McCabe are, right? Like, they're just men, and Holden looked great, especially when Brandon Noel is not doing his thing. So there was a factor. The other thing that I think in my opinion, again, I'm not smart enough to know these things, but that I noticed with Oakland is there's a bit of an identity crisis where you have Jalen Jones, who's really point guard for this team, but comes off the bench. But he's in there in crunch time. But if he's the dude, then why doesn't he start? Like, I start to kind of question some of the rotation stuff here. Like, I start to wonder if there's an identity crisis about, who's in control when the game matters. In the last couple minutes of the first half, end of the game, that's when this game matters. And is the ball going to be in DQ's hands or Jalen's hands? Like, who's running the show? Half the time you've got Makeba in foul trouble all of a sudden, or Buru, and it's like you just have this kind of weird conglomeration of players sometimes at the end of these halves, and I start to wonder how much of a factor that is. Again, not smart enough to know, but I'd like to think that the coaching staff's at least taking a look at that.
Yeah, I gotta imagine too, and it's like they have the talent. All the scouting they've done, the historic, offensive output from players they brought in, like they have the pieces. It's just something's not fitting. And I don't claim to be the guy to figure that out either. But you could tell that like some of the pieces they don't quite fit right, and they don't mesh well enough to be the well-oiled machine they want Oakland to be.
No, and at this time of the year, by now you should have a more solid rotation, barring injury, which injury does come up a little bit here in this week, but like barring injury, you would think you're going to have a solid rotation. You're going to know who's doing what and when. And sometimes I'm not sure. And maybe that's, Deng Majok plays 9 minutes in this game. Great minutes from a backup big. He pretty much doesn't play in Northern Kentucky in their second game this week. Like that's an interesting thing to me. Nassim Nashor is a walk-on. Greg Kampe has no problems playing walk-ons. He showed, let's not forget Blake Lampman and Trey Townsend were walk-ons.
Yeah.
Whether they really were or not, they were. Although I think both ended up with this. It doesn't matter. But he's not afraid to give Nashor some minutes. But all of a sudden it's like, is this a punishment? Like he's mad at Jalen Jones, so Nashor goes in, or he's mad at DQ for hoisting a three that was ill-advised, so Nashor goes. Like it's just, I don't know. The pieces don't seem to fit. Jason Woodrich playing through injury all year. We've talked about that. I think you and I did.
Yeah.
And that sucks. But the reality is they're just not getting the output from him that they need. So then they're looking for it somewhere else. And, it just all plays into the fact that I've been an Oakland fan even longer than you have.
Yes.
It's a long time. It's weird to me to see an Oakland team that can't score the ball. They can't play defense. Okay, that's an old school normal Oakland thing. But can't score is weird.
Yeah, it's strange, no doubt. And any kind of glimpse or piece of evidence we can find, more minutes for this person, that person, anything we can find where you try to, see like, is that the key? Could this be the key out of this entire ring of possible keys? Like we're just trying to figure it out here. So maybe it will come down to the rotation. Mashore had, has some good spots, good performances, and we'll talk about that with Northern Kentucky for sure. We'll have to just kind of keep watching and see if they can find something in the middle of this Horizon League season. But overall, to cap off the Wright State portion, a 66-62 loss in Dayton, Ohio, is what Oakland took on the road as they faced Northern Kentucky in Highland Heights. And this one was so close to being the same game as in Wright State, and then it wasn't. Matt, what were your thoughts on the game?
They really thought about just doing the same game over, whether we liked it or not. I happen to be not only watching the game, but I a lot of times if I'm not watching with Neil Rule synced up, I will switch over to Neil Rule's call at the half so I can hear Greg Kampe's thoughts, because he grabs that, just like he does at home games. He always jumps on the radio and you get Greg Kampe's thoughts. And Greg Kampe was livid, and livid probably isn't the right word, but I don't know what your ratings here are as far as language, but Greg Kampe was angry.
He was angry. I tweeted out that he was hot, but that wasn't enough. Livid, doesn't seem to be enough. It was hot.
It was there's I think you need like an adjective and then the word, like whatever it is. Like he was not a happy coach, and I listened to the Greg Kampe radio show on this Monday, and it was funny. Somebody asked him about what he said in that locker room, and he said, if my bosses were standing outside of it, I'm not sure I'd have a job. So he clearly went in and lit some people up. And I remember last year there was a game where he said it was the first time he'd done it. Was mid-season, and he lit up the team. He said, I have an experienced team. Going in and yelling at these adults essentially isn't going to do any good. Well, clearly he needed to go in and yell at some people in this instance, because they came back and they got their stuff figured out.
They did for sure. And just to kind of paint the picture for those who missed the game. So Oakland, it was an iron grip on this game, especially on a defensive side. They got up to a 17-point lead in the first half, and then the script kind of kicked in. That 17-point lead would reduce to 9 before going into half, and it kind of continued a few minutes into the second half. So Oakland, you could tell, was on that script of just letting that first half lead go, and that kind of set the stage for Campy's outburst.
It did, and I mean, he's as frustrated as any fan's gonna. I mean, more so. He's way more invested than a fan's gonna be, right? So yeah. It's frustrating. And again, I feel not smart enough. Again, disclaimer, not smart enough. But Malcolm Christie was out in this game. He's gonna be out a couple weeks. I think it sounds like a bruised hand. I'm not sure when that happened, but out with a bruised hand. So Jack Hoth removes the red shirt to play. Okay, cool. Jack Hoth's a shooter in theory. They're gonna let him kind of be that shooter. I get that, but if this person has been a redshirt and now is in your starting lineup, to me, that's a weird mishmash. Like, where, can you not put in Jalen Jones? Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer. It just felt weird to me. It feels like we're sometimes trying to prove a point and be the smartest man in the room. And let me tell you, as someone who sometimes tries to be the smartest man in the room in basketball, it does not work out well for me, nor anybody else. I'm the same person who had Wright State in 10th place because I was trying to be the smartest man in the room. I look stupid. I'm okay with that, but I don't know. Jack Hoth, he made a couple threes. He made one early too, which was kind of set the tone. It's like, oh, maybe we can shoot the three. We still
he
can't.
Made his first one.
Yeah, and then he ended up 2 of 8 from 3. Fine. I mean,
that's his first D1 game.
That exactly, and I hope that he gets a chance to keep shooting. Once you lose that red shirt, you're not going to get that year back. Might as well. At the same time, my thought is if in this day and age of basketball with NIL and all these things, and if you've got someone that's good enough to start for you, why are we redshirting him? Because he could just leave next year anyway, and I wouldn't fault him. Let's get these kids in and play. If you're good enough to start a game, you were good enough to pick up minutes. Why hasn't this happened sooner? I'm sure there's a reason. I don't know it, but the one thing I do want to point out, though, the biggest difference between this game and the Wright State game, they made their free throws. They shot 50% from the free throw line against Wright State, 57 I think it was, something just above 50. Where here they went 11 of 12 for 92%. You're going to win more games that way.
Oh yeah,
no doubt made a difference.
Yeah, and one of the biggest free throws made, as Campy kind of called this the play of the game. It was start a few minutes into that second half where I believe the lead was cut to 5. Nassim Mashor at the buzzer gets fouled on a corner 3 and makes makes the free throw for the 4-point play. That kind of gave Oakland an extra life, keeping that big lead, and they really didn't let up after that one. So though that one being one of the biggest free throws perhaps of that game against Northern Kentucky was from the freshman walk-on Mashor.
Yeah, that was big for them. The other thing that was big early is it set the tone, and it doesn't show up necessarily in the box score, is the play of Isaiah Jones. We're really seeing that what we expect from him. He's been coming off the injury, getting into shape, doing all these things, but he got the win against Loyola Chicago with that putback, and that's kind of where he makes his living, is kind of just getting in the mix. He's athletic and getting these things done, and early in this game he kind of set that tone for Oakland, and it really got them off to the big lead they had that they eventually gave most of away, but then they got back to it, and I think that's big for them.
It's big, and it could potentially be that kind of realization. You talk about getting the lead and holding on to it, but you finally see it against one of the tougher teams in the league. Could that be something that could be carried through for at least the next few games where the schedule kind of eases up on Oakland? Could that be a way for them to start getting momentum?
Here's hoping. They have to put some wins together in a row if they're going to get into the top 4 of the league. They've got to find a way to string some things together. And right now they just haven't been able to do that. So this is a good stretch for them to hopefully get that done.
And that stretch comes with a home game on Wednesday against IU Indy, currently 2-6 in the league in the 9th place spot. And then you travel on the road. Or they travel on the road. We don't. They travel on the road to Detroit Saturday afternoon. Detroit is 2-6 in the league. They sit at the 10th place spot. So at least this weekend of 2 games, Matt, it seems like this is the opportunity for Oakland to start jumping back up towards that top 4 spot.
You'd like to think so. I mean, you talk about they're 2-6. Let's not get carried away. Oakland's 3-4. They're not that much. They're not faring a whole lot better in league right now. And IU Indy is dangerous. They're a team that is putting things together. They're down their lead scorer right now in Zelinskis. Not sure if he'll be available for the Oakland game or not. He was out this week, but he's a big part of it. But the thing that IU Indy was able to do without Zelinskis is they started to instill that confidence in other players. So all of a sudden, somebody else had to do this work that they were expecting from one place, and they're putting it together. IU Indy is made up of pretty much all D2 players that came with their new coach this year, Paul Cosero, over to IU Indy. So they're capable, and it's just a matter of figuring it out and putting it together at the D1 level. And they're starting to get there. They might be 2-6 or whatever we said they were, but the reality is they've been in a lot of close games with a lot of really good teams in the Horizon League, and this is not a game that Oakland can look past. And I don't think they will. I have no reason to think they will. But it's definitely a very good IU Indy team. Oakland's advantage will be down low, which it is most games. That's just, I think I've said this before. I say it on our podcast all the time. I did not expect Oakland's front court to be the strength. I was not huge on Baru and Makeba being undersized, and they've proved me wrong as, again, smartest man in the room. What do I know? They're fantastic. And IU Indy does not have a strong front court that can keep up with those two. So if they can feed them early, maybe get IU Indy in some foul trouble, get to the line and make free throws, I think that's where Oakland has a shot to get this done.
Yeah, and being at home is going to be an advantage for it, even though, a Wednesday night crowd, it's not going to be like Saturday might be where you got tons of Detroit sports going on that day, but at least being home, middle of the week, it gives you a chance to have a decent crowd and at least a distracting, presence for the opposing free throws. You can kind of get an advantage that way.
I will say, selfishly, I hope so. As someone who has lived those days way back in his college days, I'd love to see the arena get back to what we're used to seeing. I feel like it's been a little slow this year, but we haven't really had a great home game midweek. Like not in a class. Get out of your dorm room. Let's fill that place and let's get it crazy. And that's always been an advantage for Oakland. I'd love to see that return in this IU Indy game.
And then to cap things off here, the Saturday game against Detroit Mercy. It's not the same thing. Obviously the same could be said for IU Indy as well. Like those teams last year, really historically bad seasons. But that's not the same team, especially for this Detroit team. Coach Montgomery, that's a lot of progress to make in 1 year for this team so far, despite it not looking pretty on paper.
Well, and Oakland is very fortunate to be getting Detroit Mercy right when they are, because Detroit Mercy is so injury plagued, it's not even funny. I'm not a Detroit Mercy fan. I'm not someone who usually is going to talk them up, and I even feel bad. They started 5 freshmen in their last game because of injuries. They're down their main scorer, Lovejoy. They're down their main big Jeter now. He got hurt recently. They're down one of their top freshmen that was playing. They're down Mac Mansell, who's out with an ankle injury. They are missing so many pieces, and yet they just continue to show up and grind. They lost to Milwaukee this week, but at the same time, they were in it for a while. There was no reason to be in it, but they were in it. It's a good team that Coach Montgomery is clearly building a new culture there coming out of the Mike Davis era, and you can see what he's doing. It takes some of the fun out of the game when they're not coming in. It's not even that they're not coming in at full strength. They're not even coming in 3/4 strength. They're unless some players get healthy, they're just getting healthy bodies out there the best they can and playing the best basketball they can. But that's tough. If you imagine Oakland being, starting 7 through 15, and that's what they're playing, that's basically what Detroit Mercy is doing right now.
Yeah, sadly they got to start conference play, or at least getting towards the middle of conference play. They're running on a low battery pretty quick here, and it's a shame to see. But all in all, for this weekend, or for this upcoming week for Oakland, 2 of the lower teams in the league, but it's, I guess we could consensusly say it's going to be harder than it looks to be able to come out of this with a 2-0 record.
Oakland, like I said, Oakland needs to stack some victories because facts are better than opinions, and right now Oakland's towards the bottom of the standings themselves. So these are 2 wins that they need and a good chance to get on a 3-game winning streak.
And we wish the Golden Grizzlies luck in that. kind of win streak that'll cap us off here at the Oakland men's basketball game reviews here on the GioMoShow with Matt Dudek of the HoriZone Roundtable. Matt, thanks so much again for coming back on the show, and I believe you've earned a third trip to the show.
Oh, thank God. I appreciate it, Gio. No, I always I love talking Horizon League basketball. That's why I do what I do. It's great to talk with you. You are like Mr. Oakland now as far as from the broadcast, and I appreciate you doing what you do, man.
And you can find Matt on the HoriZone Roundtable podcast, once again, released every Sunday, and Expand Your Horizons Preview Edition, released every Tuesday. So be sure to give Matt a follow as well on Twitter at HoriZonMatt. My name is Giovanni Mosheri. Happy to have you here on the GioMoShow. Rate, review, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.